Welcome to Brother Miller's Notes. I'm really excited about our topic today. Nephi introduces what we're going to study in this video by writing, and now I, Nephi, write more of the words of Isaiah. For my soul delighteth in his words. For I will liken his words unto my people, and I will send them forth unto all my children, for he verily saw my Redeemer, even as I have seen him. And he wants to make sure you remember to liken these words to yourselves. As he writes, now I write some of the words of Isaiah, that whoso of my people shall see these words may lift up their hearts and rejoice for all men. Now these are the words, and you may liken them unto you and to all men. President Eyring did that, and he described his experience by saying this. Now I'll read to you my own experiment, where the Lord speaks directly to the heart with a different message. This is personal. It lets you look into my heart. Here's the instruction I followed. And now I write the words of Isaiah, that whoso of my people shall see these words may lift up their hearts and rejoice for all men. Now these are the words. You may liken them unto you and unto all men. So I began to read in 2 Nephi 12 and thought, the Lord is speaking to me and wants to tell me something. What is it he wants to tell me directly? Then I came to a verse in the Isaiah passage that jumped out as if it were already underlined. I will make you this promise about reading the Book of Mormon. You will be drawn to it as you understand that the Lord has embedded in it his message to you. Nephi, Mormon, and Moroni knew that, and those who put it together put it in messages for you. The book was written for you, and there are simple, direct messages for you that will tell you how to change. So our theme as we read these and study these verses today is, what does the Lord want to tell you today? How I'm organizing this, a little bit of a worksheet type format that I'll have available for you if you want to use it. There are four distinct things that seems to be an emphasis of Isaiah. Number one, of course, is Christ. And for Nephi, he quotes Isaiah to persuade more fully his family and us to believe in Christ. There's also the words of Christ give them hope, much joy, happiness. There is a consistent desire for us to liken these words to ourselves. And there's also a lot about the destiny of Israel. And jumping ahead to when Christ quotes a couple chapters of Isaiah, he concludes after he's quoted the chapters and says these words have talked about Israel and Gentiles as well. And so that's in 2 Nephi 23, verses 1 through 3. So for each of these chapters, what I'm going to do is just share a few verses that came to me, that maybe were a little bit more meaningful to me that you could highlight, but there's going to be so many more that you'll find that you'll want to highlight. But let me give you a few. So we're going to start off by talking about the tops of the mountains. Well, that just looks pretty, because that's where Zion is going to be centered, as Joseph Smith's taught. You know there's been a great discussion in relation to Zion, where it is and where the gathering of the dispensation is. And, which I am now going to tell you, the prophets have spoken and written upon it, but I will make a proclamation that will cover a broader ground. The whole of America is Zion itself, from the north to the south, and is described by the prophets, who declared that it is Zion where the mountain of the Lord should be, and that it should be in the center of the land. The elders shall take up and examine the old prophecies in the Bible, and they will see it. Now, by the way, if you don't live in America, don't worry about that, because this is also going to expand out from Isaiah's writings to where you are, your home, your ward, your stake. So we start off in the top of the mountains. There will be the house of the Lord will be established, and from the house of the Lord, all people will start to flow and will flow to it. As Salt Lake City has hosted the 2002 Winter Olympics and Paralympics Games, I know that's over about 20 years ago, we have seen partial fulfillment of many prophecies. The nations of the earth and many of the leaders have come. They have seen us serving alongside our friends in this community and our neighbors of the other faith. They have seen the light in our eyes and felt the clasp of our hands. The mountain of the house of the Lord, with its brightly lit spires, has been witnessed by 3.5 billion people around the world. So in this chapter, it talks about the top of the mountains. It talks about the mountain of the Lord. There we will be able to learn his ways, walk in his paths. And I love the phrase, that we're not taught anymore about war. Oh, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Just so you're aware, I have made videos on several of these chapters, and they're Brother Miller's notes, and so each one kind of individually has a little bit more detail on some of the things I'm going to talk about. So moving to chapter 13, one of the first things that just kind of came to my mind, or just stood out to me, was a little phrase, their countenance thus witness against them. And I thought, my countenance is more than just my appearance. It's my demeanor, it's my facial expressions, it's what are my actions. Does that reflect my inner commitment to follow Christ? It's not just my clothes. It's my smile. It's how I treat someone when I walk in the door and they're at a fast food place and they're the ones that are at the counter. Does my countenance reflect my inner commitment to follow Christ? Other things that just stood out to me is there is hope. We say to the righteous, even in their difficult times, it will be well with you. There is a pleading by God for us, by Christ for us. There's a shift to the daughters of Zion, and usually when it's Zion, it's kind of contemporary, and daughters of Zion is a future thing, and that one day, if their pride there, the Lord will take away the bravery of whatever it is. Focus your confidence in God, not in things of the world. Now, in chapter 14, there's some imagery that goes back to when Israel is fleeing out of Egypt. And as that house of Israel, as they camp, they will put up the tabernacle. And inside the tabernacle is the Ark of the Covenant. It's very symbolic. During the day, as they're going forth, there's a cloud of smoke that goes in front of them, leading them away. There is a pillar of fire that rests above the tabernacle at night. They are both symbolic of the presence of God. He is a relief to them during the day, like a cloud on a hot summer day. He is like a fire at night, to warm, to guide, to lead. And so in this chapter, there is an emphasis that one day those of Israel will be called holy, that every dwelling place, assembly, will be a defense in the last days. There will be a shadow in the daytime from heat, a place of refuge, a covert from storm and from rain. Those last two verses are some of my most favorite in all of Isaiah. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place. And just think about it this way. We call it our home. And Mount Zion, upon her assemblies, we assemble in our ward and our steakhouses. In verse 6, there shall be a tabernacle. Today we don't usually call it tabernacle because that was the traveling temple, but today it's a temple. And going up above that, end of verse 5, the cloud and the smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night are visible reminders of the presence and protection of God. They will be a defense, a protective covering for us. And the temple will be a place of rest for us from the heat. It'll be a place of refuge, a place of safety. It will be a place of shelter, a covert from the storm and from the rain. And so you are aware, this is a prophecy about our day. When the angel Moroni appeared to Joseph Smith in 1823, he quoted these two verses. And after he quoted these two verses, he said that these verses were soon to be fulfilled. I hope they're being fulfilled in your home, that it's a place of refuge, a place of defense, a place that's a shelter from the heat of the day. Chapter 15 there's quite a few woes in this one. Woe to them that call good evil, evil good. But once again, that theme, his hand is stretched out still able to welcome us. As a part of what he's doing to help us, to bring us closer to him, that hand being stretched out to, is he sets up an ensign to all the nations. President Hinckley said, when the brethren stood on the summit, they looked over this valley, the Salt Lake Valley. To the south of them it was largely barren, except for the willows and rushes that grew along the streams and carried water from the mountains to the lake. There was no building of any kind, but Brigham Young had said the previous Saturday, this is the place. The summit where they stood was named Ensign Peak, out of reference to these great prophetic words of Isaiah. And he, speaking of God, will lift up an ensign unto the nations from afar, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth, and behold, they shall come forth, They shall come with speed swiftly. Marion G. Romney simply testified, this church is the standard which Isaiah said the Lord would set up for the people in the latter day. In chapter 16 is an awesome chapter about Isaiah's calling to be a prophet. Now this is Isaiah 6, and chapters 1 through 5, you know he's acting as a prophet, so this may be a little bit more than that, but he describes how he saw, verse 1, the Lord. He's testifying, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne. He realizes he has his sins, the issues he's coming with, but in verse 7, there's an idea that the iniquity is taken away. Now in that chapter, there are seraphim that are there, and they're like fiery angels. Angels made out of fire. Not made out of fire, but fiery. And they can't take the tongue or the coal from the fire. They have to use tongs. When you start looking at that imagery, you realize this is teaching us a lot about the atonement. And so, a little more notes on that. You can see how that relates to us in the atonement in that video on Brother Miller's notes. So, chapter 17, boy, everyone recognizes this one. Verse 14, virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Chapter 18, some of the great things just stand out to me is don't fear what they fear. Don't fear what the wicked fear. Focus on what matters most. He, God, is a sanctuary for us. Verse 17, we can wait on the Lord. Chapter 19, you might want to start singing Handel's Messiah. For unto us a child is born. And you probably noticed I've only done 5. There was more I could do in a lot of these chapters. Well, every chapter I think. But in this one I did 6 because I want you to see that theme is just there from Isaiah. No matter what's going on in your life, his hand, God's hand, is still stretched out. He's there waiting to lift you up, to bring you closer to him. Chapter 20, once again, his hand is stretched out still. And our burdens can be taken away. Our yokes can be destroyed because of the anointing of Christ. So that's chapter 19 or 20. And just so you know, another chapter that is quoted to the prophet Joseph Smith by Moroni when he visits the young lad is chapter 11, verses 1 through 16. Now, with that background, you may just kind of think, okay, why does Moroni quote chapter 11? Or 2 Nephi, that should be 21, to Joseph. In chapter 21, it talks about the Spirit of the Lord resting upon him, the Spirit of wisdom, understanding, counsel, knowledge. As it gives of some of these things of symbols, you can go to section 113 of Doctrine and Covenants, verses 1 through 6, and it kind of tells us a little bit more about the meaning of those symbols, what the root represents, the branch, the stump, the shoot. Kind of the summary for me is the angel Moroni stated that this verse was soon to be fulfilled when he spoke in 1823. In the next 10 years, the rod grew as Joseph Smith was called as a prophet, was given from the stem Christ, the priesthood, and the keys of the priesthood so that he would be an instrument in the hands of the Lord to restore the ensign of the nations and to gather the Lord's people in the last days. The church can be seen as the branch that grew out of the roots of Christ. Even though a branch may be cut off, like the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, the church would remain strong and rooted in Christ. There is nothing between the roots and the branch. There is nothing that stands between Christ and his church, between him and his prophet. Chapter 22 continues with that theme of comforting. And this is one that makes you kind of want to just start singing, really, because you praise, you call him his name, you sing to the Lord. Great cross-reference. I didn't put any really cross-references in here except for I think maybe a couple. Section 25, verse 12. Counsel to Emma Smith. Oh, just so beautiful. Great is the Holy One of Israel, and he is in our midst. Chapter 23, there is a burden with Babylon, the things of the world. Get rid of it. Because the Lord is going to lift up that banner to help us. He's called us. He has helped to sanctify us. One day, verse 9, the Lord will come. And for him, the people are the most important thing. They're more precious than gold. And chapter 24, this is once again the last chapter that Nephi is going to give. And the promise, the Lord will yet choose Israel. He's going to help him. The Lord will give us rest. There's a little kind of few verses on Lucifer, his goal to be able to exalt himself over God. And the reminder, verse 27, his hand is stretched out. It's still there. Nothing's going to turn it back. He still wants to help us in our days. So a couple ideas that I've just given you to teach this in the home or at church or class, wherever you may be. Have your class or your family do the same thing President Eyring did. How does this speak to me? So as they read it, maybe these are ones, if your kids are old enough, you have them read to themselves. Highlight things that strike out to them. You could just give them that kind of structure. Look for things that bring you closer to Christ, that give you hope or teach you about the destiny of Israel, in addition to that likening. You could, and if you want to use that little handout that I'm going to have at my WordPress site, you could cut each chapter up and give it to family members or in a class. Okay, using kind of a handout. Here's some suggestions. You can study Isaiah's message to Christ, how it relates to Christ, gives you hope, likened, destiny of Israel, and then come back and have a discussion. What did you learn? What did you see? You could use the handout as a study guide for family discussions, and you'll find so much more than what I put there. But thanks for spending some time with me. Once again, all the quotes I have will be on my WordPress site, brotherrmiller.wordpress.com, and I'll put the little handout that I have, I'll include it so you can just kind of print off and cut it up if you want or use it. Hey, have a great day. Keep smiling.